What if there were no people on planet Earth? The world wakes up, but no footsteps echo in the streets. No car engines hum, no voices fill the air. Cities stand still, frozen in time. Skyscrapers tower above empty roads, their glass windows reflecting nothing but the wind. Without people, Earth would fall into a profound silence. The kind broken only by the rustling of leaves, the cries of birds, and the distant howl of wolves reclaiming forgotten streets. Nature would barely notice at first. For the planet, humanity's disappearance would be like a sigh, brief and unremarkable. But soon, the effects would spread like ripples across a pond. Within days of humans vanishing, power grids would fail. Without engineers to maintain power plants and electrical systems, cities would plunge into darkness. Refrigerators would stop humming, and the glow of digital screens would disappear. Food and grocery stores would begin to rot, and animals, wild and domestic, would grow restless. Dogs left behind would bark desperately, seeking their owners. Cows and farms would wander confusedly. Zoo enclosures would no longer contain their inhabitants as fences rusted and barriers weakened. Streets once filled with traffic would become highways for deer, coyotes, and even bears. With no one to trim hedges or mow lawns, plants would spread rapidly. Ivy would scale brick walls, vines would weave through window frames, and tree roots would crack through pavement. Weeds would shoot up in sidewalks, and forests would expand into suburbs, reclaiming the land that once belonged to them. Rivers would break free from their engineered paths, flooding abandoned cities and washing away streets. Beavers would thrive, building dams in places where bridges once stood. Coral reefs, once ravaged by pollution, would begin to recover as oceans grew cleaner. Nature's survivors would thrive. Birds, no longer disturbed by human noise, would sing louder and expand their territories. Rodents would flourish in city ruins, creating vast colonies in old buildings. Without pest control, cockroach populations might surge at first, but predators like birds and lizards would quickly balance them out. Domesticated animals would face a grim fate. House pets like dogs and cats would struggle without human care. Smaller breeds might vanish, while larger, stronger dogs could revert to their primal instincts, forming wild packs. Livestock like cows, chickens, and sheep, bred for dependence, would face severe challenges in the wild, while pigs would rapidly adapt, becoming aggressive and reclaiming their feral nature. Without maintenance, buildings would begin to crumble. Skyscraper windows would shatter in high winds, while steel frames rusted under endless rain. Bridges would weaken as rust devoured their supports. The tallest towers would stand like skeletons, their metal bones eventually crumbling into dust. Nuclear power plants, left unattended, would melt down. While initial explosions would release radiation, Earth's natural weather patterns would slowly scatter the fallout, reducing its long-term impact. Within a few decades, the land around these sites would transform into thriving ecosystems, as nature reclaimed even the most toxic spaces. Chapter 6. The Return of the Forests. Over the next century, forests would explode across the globe. The Amazon would reclaim deforested land, while wild trees would overtake cities like New York, London, and Beijing. Concrete jungles would give way to real jungles. Animal migrations would adapt as nature reshaped the planet. Wolves would prowl through city streets. Elephants might reclaim parts of Asia, and jaguars could spread further north. Birds would nest inside forgotten skyscrapers, their calls echoing through hollow buildings. The oceans would experience their own transformation. Without fishing vessels trawling the seas, fish populations would skyrocket. Whales would sing across oceans without the interference of cargo ship engines. Coral reefs, no longer bleached by human activity, would rebuild their vibrant kingdoms beneath the waves. Great white sharks would thrive once again, and ancient predators would reclaim dominance in their watery realms. Within 300 years, almost no trace of human civilization would remain. Forests would bury cities, and concrete roads would crack and vanish beneath layers of moss and soil. The Eiffel Tower's iron skeleton would rust and fall, while the Statue of Liberty would crumble into the harbor below. The Great Wall of China, built from stone, would likely outlast other structures, becoming a new habitat for animals and plants alike. Monuments carved from stone, like Mount Rushmore and the pyramids, would endure for centuries, slowly being swallowed by vegetation and sand. While Earth would thrive without us, our presence would linger. Radio waves sent from old broadcast towers would drift endlessly through space, a faint whisper from a vanished civilization. Probes like Voyager 1, still sailing through the void, would carry messages intended for alien life, the last surviving testament to our existence. In the fossil record, future species might someday unearth layers of concrete, plastic, and metal, the geological scars of our time on Earth. Our plastic waste, buried in landfills, could persist for millennia. If Earth were left untouched by humans for thousands of years, evolution would march on. New species would arise. Birds might grow larger, their wings adapted for gliding over vast cities now overgrown with trees. Octopuses, intelligent and adaptable, might conquer the seas in new ways. Insects could diversify in ways unseen since prehistoric times, reclaiming dominance over the land. Earth would endure. Nature would heal. The world would become wild and untamed once again, as it had been before humanity's rise. Perhaps some distant alien race might someday visit Earth, marveling at the ruins of ancient towers, crumbling statues, and forgotten roads. They would study our artifacts and wonder who we were, and what stories we told before we vanished. Earth, once claimed by mankind, would belong to nature once more. The winds would whisper through silent streets, and the forests would grow tall. A world reborn without us.